go ahead and get started this morning. Let's open in a word of prayer. Brother Hamilton, will you open us in a word of prayer this morning? It's good to see you. Last week we finished the book of Galatians, admittedly kind of hurriedly. Probably could have had about 4 more lessons in there, but then, Doc, it would have been over a year, and I was already getting grief because it was close to a year, so we needed to save that. So, which takes to the place that probably my 2 favorite things, and I don't know which I like better. My 2 favorite things about being in a series, Doug, one is you always know what's next. It's just the next verse. There's no struggle. There's nothing out of your head. There's nothing, what do you come up with? How do you look at it? It's just the next verse. You just study it and you go from there. I love that about a series. And second, I didn't write it. So it's just what's there. If somebody doesn't like it, it's not because I picked it out and said, now's the time. Go talk to the writer. And I love the security of both of those things. That being said, I hate finishing anything. Maybe that's why it was close to a year. Because as soon as you finish anything, now you're at that dreaded place of what's next. So we finished last week, and that brings us up to what's next. And I always throw that out there, what's next, and people will volunteer things. And Dr. Boer, I love that because then I don't have to think about what's next. So, Eric knew we were done, and he's like, Dad, do 1 John, do 1 John. It's been like 10 years since you've done 1 John, do 1 John. And Doc, I love 1 John. It's almost, on the scale of hard, it's right in there with Galatians. I mean, there's a lot of stuff in 1 John not fun to deal with. And maybe that's why I like it, because I have a contentious spirit. But maybe I just like the fact that it slaps me around and makes me wake up in lots of areas. So, Doc, I gave a lot of consideration to doing 1 John. But, okay, it has been 10 years, but I'm sure there are people, back me up on this, it made me feel good, Ben. I'm sure there are people who probably remember some parts of 1 John, and I don't want to make them have to listen to it again. So I said, can't really do 1 John. So then the next thing, Brother Hamilton's just like, whoa, we just do the next book. Just roll right into Ephesians, because love Ephesians. You want to talk about doctrine, you go to Ephesians. Now, I don't know if we can finish Ephesians in a year, but let's go to Ephesians. And but then I remember Brother Mike spent some time in Ephesians not too long ago, and so moved Ephesians. So then, I don't know, almost a year ago, the preacher asked me, oh, what are you going to do after you do Galatians? I kind of chuckled on the inside because he made it sound like it would be done in 3 or 4 weeks. And I said, well, I've always wanted to study the healing miracles of Christ. Started that one time. It's one of the few series I've started and we didn't finish. So I was really excited about doing that. But then, Ben, I'd have to start back over at the beginning. And again, I know you would remember some of those things we did when we talked about the healing miracles of Jesus. So you've messed this up twice. And then I remembered this little passage in Jude. Jude chapter 1. That big chapter, verse 20. But ye, beloved, building up yourselves on the most holy faith. And Doug, that seemed perfect to me. To come right out of Galatians, where you're dealing with those who fell prey to false doctrine. Jude closes towards the end of this, and it gives us 4 or 5 great points on how we can build up ourselves, how we can be strong, how we can make sure we don't fall prey, how we can prepare to stand. And I got all excited, and I wanted to do that, and spent, I don't know, I probably started this about a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks ago, which is why when Eric kept saying, do 1 John, I would listen to him, but I had no intention of ever listening to him. And I just don't tell him that. I was telling the preacher today, he's going to do things. But Michelle told him his pants were too short. Now everybody's going to look in his pants. He's going to say, no, but they're not too short. They look just fine. But instead of just telling them they look just fine like I should have done, I popped off with, well, some things you just don't need a reply. You listen to her, you don't argue with her, you just don't give a reply. And so that's what I did with Eric for 2 weeks. I did listen to him, knew I wasn't going to do it, I just didn't give him a reply. The way Josh has learned that, except he's worse than me. He'll turn around to Katie and say, I did, you just didn't hear me. No, that's totally unfair. So for about 2 weeks, I knew we were going to go to Jude. But Doug, the challenge to get to verse 20 is there's 19 verses in front of it. And those 19 verses in Jude are pretty tough verses. This is a small book that's not often taught. And as we get into it the next 3 or 4 weeks, we'll probably see why. Before we do that, I want you to see some things that help set the tone for the environment Jude was written in. And they're going to come from other books. Eric, do you have Acts chapter 20? Acts chapter 20, Paul this is Luke writing, but it's writing about Paul. And what Paul did is he called the Ephesians elders together. He said, let's come together. I have something I need to say to you before I go. And this is what he says. Take heed, therefore, unto yourselves and to all the flock, over the which the Holy Ghost hath made you overseers. If you want to know who the overseers are here or what makes up an overseer, you can tell right there. Man did not choose them, God chose them. The Holy Ghost chose them. So he's talking about the pastors. He says here, over which the Holy Ghost hath made you overseers, to feed the church of God, which he hath purchased with his own blood. Go on. For I know this, that after my departing shall grievous wolves enter in among you, not sparing the flock. Also of your own selves shall men arise, speaking perverse things to draw away disciples after them. Two things right here. Got to know both of these, Dr. Boyer. There are two things. One, people are going to come in like wolves, unaware. They're going to be wolves in sheep's clothing. They're coming from the outside. They're going to come into the inside, and then they're going to affect us from the inside. Okay, Doug, there's one thing. But notice the next verse says, they're not all coming from the outside. Some you're going to be sitting next to right now. They're already here. There are some coming, and there are some who are already here. Therefore, watch and remember that by the space of 3 years, for 3 years, imagine I said the same thing for 3 years. For 3 years, I cease not to warn everyone night and day. And Hank, I think this is like most important, with tears. This is not Paul getting excited because I'm going to stand up and I'm going to tell you how bad you are and how terrible things are and how much. Paul, with broken heart, is saying, because I love you, because I want the best for you, I want to protect you. With everything that is inside of me, I want good for you, so I'm warning you. Give me the next one. 2 Peter. But there were false prophets also among the people, even as there shall be false teachers among you. Wow. Who privately shall bring in damnable heresies, even denying the Lord that bought them, and bring upon themselves swift destruction. And many shall follow their pernicious ways. Many shall follow their pernicious ways. Not us, not here. Okay, this is an important warning. Doug, many shall follow their pernicious ways. That's why Jude is such an important book for us to look at. By reason of whom the way of the truth shall be evil spoken of. And through covetousness they shall with feigned words make merchandise of you, whose judgment now of a long time lingereth not, and their damnation slumbereth not. I think next is Colossians. Beware lest any man should spoil you through philosophy and vain deceit, after the tradition of men, after the rudiments of the world, and not after Christ. Philippians. Beware of dogs, beware of evil workers, beware of the concision. Did we go to Galatians? No, 1 John. Beloved, believe not every spirit, but try the spirits whether they are of God, because many false prophets are gone out into the world. Now, Galatians, right? Oh, be Galatians. Okay, Galatians, we can just go to Galatians. Oh, foolish Galatians, who hath bewitched you, who has come in. Jude 1 through 4, hopefully 1 through 4 this morning. The servant of Jesus Christ, brother of James, to them who are sanctified by God Jesus Christ and called. Okay, so far, this is all love and greeting. Jude. And he walks in, and you want to talk, that first verse, Doc, that first verse gives us some serious doctrine. This is God's plan. Christ purchased it, and the Holy Spirit called you. All three members of the Trinity. Boom, complete salvation rolled out. And then what does he say? He gives us his wish for us. His wish for us is that we might have mercy, that we might have peace, that we might live in love. And one of my favorite words in all the Bible, be multiplied. This is saying be added. Ms. Angie, he does not say, I want this to be added to you so you have a little one. This is like multiplied. So it's 3 times 3. It's 9. And you multiply it again. And you multiply it again. So if you go 1 plus 1, that's 2. Okay, but if you go 1 times 2, it's 2. Times 2, it's 4. Times 2, it's 8. Times 2, it's 16. Multiplied is... It's like when David said, according to the multitude of thy tender mercies. You take all the bank of your tender mercies, and as you evaluate that, that's how much I want. Jude starts writing this, and he opens up, and it's just this loving, sweet, hopeful book. But then he gets to verse 3. Beloved, when I gave all diligence to write unto you of the common salvation, he tells us right here, this was my intent. I wanted to write to you about these wonderful, loving things. What a strange opening. Because he's about to tell us, this is what I wanted to do. I couldn't. It was needful for me to write unto you and to exhort you that ye should earnestly contend for the faith, which was once delivered unto the saints. For there are certain men crept in unawares, who were before of old ordained to the condemnation, ungodly men, turning the grace of God into lasciviousness, and denying the only Lord God and our Lord Jesus Christ. Yeah. I said this book isn't popular. It's not popular, Lorraine, it's not popular because this becomes a militant cry for us to fight a war. Now, the weapons of our war are not carnal. It's not to go out and throw stones. It's not to fight. It's not to be ugly. It's not to be bitter. That's what's so important here, that we understand the attitude with which he's writing. I wanted to come and encourage you and in love write about these things. But I had to write about something else. We're supposed to overcome good. We're supposed to overcome evil with good. But if we're going to do that, Hank, if we're going to do that, the good must be pure. And so he's writing and saying it can't be compromised. It can't be weakened, not by carnality, not by our flesh, or not by man's thinkings coming in and getting swerved in and offered up as biblical. And that's been constantly the problem. So we're going to spend a little time this morning. You know, I don't play golf, but I've been looking for a new phrase except for a big porch. I've used that too much. So now I need a new one. And I heard my boss complaining about, going golfing, and he hates to go with this one guy because he stands always up there, and he does too much wiggling at the tee, and he never hits the ball. So I'm kind of doing some wiggling at the tee this morning. He says, I wanted to write about salvation, but I couldn't. What started out here to be a friendly, comforting message ends up to be a war cry for truth. Will you join the battle for truth? And that's what I think we're going to see as we go through this book of Jude. Now that starts with the question. Ben, here's the question. Will you join the battle for truth? Well, what is truth? I'm not looking for an easy answer to get right on the test, so we stop the conversation. He's writing to the church because this is the battle of the church. It was the battle then fighting for truth. It's still the battle now. So I looked it up. What does truth mean? Truth, here was the definition. The state of being true. Not kidding, I went to 3 definitions. That was the first definition in every single one. Now, if you gave that to a teacher's going to flunk you. You can't use the word to define the word. But in 3 different dictionaries, the answer was the state or quality of being true. Finally, I went to one and it said, truth, body of real things, events, facts. So, the state of being factual, the state of being real, or the state of actual event. Not because times were different, but because I was younger, I was different. If you said truth, it implied to me something stable. Something that I could depend upon, something that was unmoving, something that was a benchmark, something that always was true. If a parent or a teacher or a preacher called something or said something was true, I thought it could be relied upon. But as I got older, I found out that's not exactly true. It's often redefined. It's redefined by who it involves or who said it or what's going on. I'll give you an easy picture. Doug, I'll give you an easy picture. I'm going to look at you because, when you start saying this word, people get mad. It's true in politics. You know what? If I am on one side, based on whoever's in there, I'll look at the good and excuse and not even talk about the bad. If I'm on the other side, I'll look at the bad and excuse the good, and I redefine truth. That's a problem, because we're changing the next generation whether truth can be relied upon. We, those who have the truth, Rob, we're making it relative. We change truth when we talk about the home, when we talk about things like I'm offended, you should come to me, and you should restore. But when you're offended, all I think about is you should forgive. Just so you know, the Bible covers both sides. And it puts the pressure on both of you. But Doug, we do this all the time. My kids can see and grow up in a place where I say, Doug one time did this to me, therefore, boom, he's off limits, he's outside. Now, what do you think that does to them when they hear somebody preach from Matthew? It just makes truth relative. I can make it what I want. Marriage in the home, one of the most dangerous things in the world. We redefine love. Who doesn't like it when you go to 1 Corinthians and teach on love? Love bears all things, hopes all things, believes all things. It doesn't keep a list, it forgives. Donnie, we love hearing that, right? But our kids watch us hold a grudge. Watch us scream and yell and pout and then justify it so that the other person's bad and I'm right. Okay, we're not winning an argument so we're the good guys at the time. We're destroying truth. There is nothing to stand upon. It's not stable. Truth becomes shifting sand that can't be built upon. Now, normally when we talk about truth, it's easy. We talk about how the world out there is destroying truth. But Hank, for like 1 out of 100 times that we're in this little book, I'm going to tell you, this book is not written to the outside. It's written as a warning to the church that we're the ones who need to protect and hold fast to truth, because we will be tempted to destroy truth and make truth relative. It's us. He's writing to us. It is not a good thing, this rejection of absolutes. And we tend to think, Miss Pat, we tend to think this is a new thing. It's a new thing. It started like in the 60s, where truth became relative. This is a tale as old as time. And we've got to understand this. All the way back to the garden, Brother Wayne. Go all the way back to the garden. There's the serpent. There's Adam and Eve. Did he bite them? Did he attack them? No, you know how he got a hold of them? He challenged truth. God had told them, God had explained to them, God had given them directions for life, yes? Yes, what did he say? Did God really say that? And if he really did say that, does he really mean that? And then, once I cause a little doubt, let me give you an alternate. The alternate, no, you won't really die. It'll be good for you. You'll become like God. He attacked the brain. He attacked the mind. He attacked truth. And when he attacked truth, it became simple. I believe him. Now I'll act upon him, and they did it. Doug, it hasn't changed. In our age, it's the same. Pastors, parents, politicians, professors, newscasters, celebrities, they have come together and adjusted standards and family and doctrine and sexuality to fit the current culture. Here we go. We do not want right and wrong to be determined by culture. Not universities, not media, not even pulpits. Where's truth? When this happens, we'll see complete reversals of culture in 1 or 2 generations. What's right today will be totally turned upside down in 30 years. I've got 2 illustrations. I got 2 illustrations. One of them you and I both are going to like. That just show the difference in culture. Eric, you have that one from the Alamo? You got to have volume.
Republic.
Ooh, hold it right there. Hold it right there. Doug, this is going to give me goosebumps. Okay, Colonel Travis was just talking, and what he's saying is, I need to speak to those fighting Tennesseans. What are you going to tell them? Well, I'm going to tell them how that we don't have representation, and how we can't own, and how we're told what to live, and how to say, and what to do, and what to be. And John Wayne's response was, let me talk to you about the values of a republic. Now, Dr. Bohr, I grew up, and so I was born in 69. 1976 was huge. I mean, you want to talk, that's like when I'm at the age I start to remember things. The bicentennial of America, all those ships in the harbor, and proud of who we are. In fact, there was a huge push, which by the way, people don't even understand. Do you understand this? Not a democracy. We were never created to be a democracy. We are a constitutional republic controlled by government. Democracy has a weakness. It changes every time the people change. We have a rule of law called the Constitution that is not supposed to change. It holds us to a truth, to a standard. Okay, so this is the time I grew up. Republic was a precious word to me. And John Wayne gives this answer about a republic. Go ahead, Eric.
Means people can live free, talk free, go or come, buy or sell, be drunk or sober, however they choose. Some words give you a feeling. Republic is one of those words that makes me tight in the throat. Same tightness a man gets when his baby takes his first step, or his first baby shaves and makes his first sound like a man. Some words can give you a feeling that make your heart warm. Republic is one of those words.
Stop it. Here's the thing with the republic. Republic, you're right, you can make decisions. You know who's responsible for the consequences of those decisions? Well, we don't like that. So today, we don't like republic. You know, in a republic where I make the decisions, you know who's held accountable? Me. I can't blame anybody. I can't be a victim. Life isn't done to me. I had every opportunity to do it myself. And if it doesn't turn out the way I liked it, it's my fault. Well, we want to blame somebody else. And that's part of the draw towards democracy. Other people made me. Other people controlled me. That's where we voluntarily give up our freedoms just for the right to blame someone else. How weak we've become. But I'll give you another one. Because that one, you know, that one's about 70 years ago. And it's talking about fighting for a republic. But today, we want socialism. Realize, 70 years ago, we weren't. 2 generations ago, we just fought a war to stop socialism. Look at how far it's changed. But here, I'll give you another one. This one's newer. I had asked the preacher if I was going to get kicked out for showing this guy in the auditorium. Eric, give me the next one.
We know big government does not have all the answers. We know there's not a program for every problem. We know, and
of course,
we have
now you walk
to give
in.
The American people a smaller, less bureaucratic government in Washington. And we have to give the American people one that lives within its means. The era of big government is over.
Stop that.
We know.
Leader of the Democratic Party standing up in his address to the Union saying government does not have all of the answers, saying big government is the problem, and the era of big government is past. And Doc, when he got elected, I was sick to my stomach. I worked in a school, walked out the front door, and threw up. And listened to him one generation ago. Now today, that same party has switched truth to the point that big government has all of the answers. The bigger the better. Socialism is the way. But I'm not talking about democracy, and I'm not talking about the United States of America. I'm talking about truth and how quickly it can be changed. It can be perverted. It can be diverted. We do not want the media or colleges or anyone to interpret what truth is. The fight for truth is the fight to go back to this book. Anything built on shifting sand will fall. We must have truth. We are told in the book of Jude to contend for it. It is never to be interpreted by the culture. This brings us to the beginning of this book, for which we're going to go through real quick and get to verse 4. Begins with a greeting like everything. Jude. Now you know who Jude was. You know who Jude was. Jude was the half-brother of Christ. Preacher, if I'm writing this, you know what I say? Hello, I'm Jude, and I'm writing to you with the authority of the half-brother of Christ, so you listen to me, and if you don't want to, I'll give you the inside scoop, because I heard it on the inside. But he doesn't even mention it. Because this is what happens when you get close to the Lord and you look at the cross. Remember we talked about this last week? When we look at the cross, boom, it has a humbling effect on us. So Jude says, I'm the brother of James. I'm the servant of Christ. No big power. What I want for you is mercy and peace and love. But when I sat down to write on those things, maybe I heard whispers, maybe I saw something, maybe the actions were beginning to change because the mind has changed. But here's the problem. You guys have let some creeps in the church. Because they crept in. Thank you, ma'am. Sounds right. That might be where we get the word creeps. Creeps sneak. They hide. They play. They put on a fair show in the flesh. And what they're going to do is destroy. And you have let them in. So, like termites which will destroy everything, what I want to write I can't, because we need to stop and we need to contend. We need to deal with this. Beloved, when I gave all diligence to write unto you of the common salvation, it was needful for me to write and to exhort you that you should earnestly contend. Contend, used one time. This word is used one time right here. Contend, it's to struggle, to wrestle. We must stop this. And again, ready? Second time. We must contend in the church. I think it's not out there. It's right here. I don't know. It's about a month ago. Dr. Boyd, about a month ago. Do you remember when Mike had all the kids up here? Maybe it was a month and a half ago. And they played telephone. And it went across there. And it was ridiculous. They didn't even come close. And they did it like 5 or 6 times, and it never came close. Realize how close they were to the death, burial, and resurrection. Okay, if we were playing telephone and it began here, this would be the first. Brother Hamilton, they're already saying you're messing it up. You're not keeping it pure. The fight is to keep it pure. We must earnestly contend for the truth. Doug, you realize how far down the line we would be? How much fallacy we have to mess with? When we only talk about, all of the little creeds we want to hold to. Earnestly contend for the truth. Here, I don't want you to answer this because it would be bad. Because you're a nutcase when you answer it wrong. If I had a glass of water, clear, cold water, I put 1 drop of arsenic in there, who would drink it? I said this because Ben would probably go, well, 1 drop, it'll only make me sick. I'll be sick, but I'll drink it. I'm going to tell you that's the danger. Because it's polluted, it's perverted. And that's kind of how we deal in the church. Okay, we'll take it with just a little drop of arsenic in it because it'll only make us sick, but it's still good water. It's still nourishing. It'll still help. We'll play with things that we should earnestly contend against. Boom, put a drop of arsenic in there. I should say no. Error in the truth is the same. No. This is why Christ preached against it, and Peter preached against it, and Paul preached against it, and John preached against it, and now Jude is preaching against it. Always warning, it's coming. Not only is it coming, it's here. 3 times in this little book, verse 3, verse 17, verse 20, Jude says, beloved. He wants you to understand, this is not coming because I'm mean and grouchy and unloving, because that's what happens when you challenge. Rob, everyone wants us just to say, okay. Just pat me on the back and let it happen. When you contest, you're the bad guy. It's part of the emotional blackmail that makes us just get along and allows for false error to continue. Jesus. No, this is coming because I love you. It is love born of conviction, not out of sentiment. The word contend. It's a 2-part word. Begins with ep. Anytime in Greek you have ep, it's just an escalator. It means even more so. It comes from the word agonizzo, which is where we get the word agony. So it's more than agony. It intensifies agony. This is a struggle. It's also a present. Mike likes English here. I'll give you English. It's a present infinitive, which means it's a continuing action. Doug, you are to continually, always, continuously fight against error. You are to constantly fight for the truth. Agonizzo is a word that comes from the A there is a participle as well. It comes from a word that really means bowl. It means like stadium. You want to know why there was agony? Because they're picturing the stadium where the gladiators would go fight, life or death. That's why it's agony. Doc, he's telling us this is life or death stuff. Not only is it agonizzo, it's epi-agonizzo. It is intensified, life or death battle, continuing forever. If you stop it, you lose. It was so important for me to write about this. Now, well, just a couple thoughts. We're going to run out of time. Can't run out of time. We've got a whole book here to go through. But Hank, I get here, I just start to think, well, what are some of the challenges to the truth inside the church? And the first one that just pops up is, outside persecution. We like to talk about the outside persecution. But historically, if we go and look at outside persecution, it's always been there. It's never really won. Even after Pentecost, what's the first thing that happened? They take John and Peter and they beat them. In front of the Sanhedrin. They lock them up. How many times was Paul beaten and arrested? And it's never one. You know, there's still a hidden church in China right now. It was after the Inquisition that the church flourished again and formed the Reformation, flourished again in Europe. We always like the battle is out there. But that's not what he's writing about here. Or we'll talk about worldliness, 1 John, love not the world, neither the things that are in the world. But if we see the world as the drop of arsenic, we might have some temptation now or then, but how much arsenic are you going to drink, Ben? We give way too much credit to these areas. The challenge is error and deception. And we spent the whole book of Galatians that talks about one of those deceptions, one of those errors, legalism. But here it's just talking about the weakening of the truth. And this might be the greatest threat. It's definitely the oldest threat. All the way back to the garden. The snake was cunning, and the tool he used was deception. And today there are 10,000 megaphones out there screaming at us to weaken and change truth. Got 4 minutes. So here we go. I'll just close this way. Over the next couple of weeks, we're going to spend some time here. But Doc, be careful, because he is, so it's easy. Keeps me in line. As long as we stay, verse by verse, I can't really mess this up. It's already written for me. But he's careful, he doesn't spend all of his time talking about the Docetists and the Gnostics, the knowers, and the Cerinthians. He doesn't talk about all of them and their doctrine. In fact, they get a blip. They turned it into lasciviousness. That's it. They perverted it. What he does is he keeps challenging us to know what is real. Now, here's an illustration. We're close. When before Angie became a nurse, when she was in nursing school, I was working at a law firm about 70 hours a week so we could pay the bills. With the hours of OT, we could pull that off, and that's about the only way. And she was going to school and working part-time at Barnett Bank, then Nations Bank, now Bank of America. Which, here, I'm getting in trouble here. Which, by the way, is an important thing. Our families today have allowed the world to tell them what the home is supposed to be like. Things like responsibility and hard work and putting the time in. I've said this before, a 25-year-old thinks they need to live the life of a 60-year-old and have all the things that a 60-year-old has. Well, that's 60 years. Okay, that's probably, 35 years of married life building that up. Why we think we should live that way today, because it's been pumped in there, and life isn't fine unless we have date night and we have this and we have that. And I'm not saying any of those things are bad. I'm just saying if we're not careful, we get it all mixed up. What matters gets mixed up. But anyway, so she's working and all these things are going on, and I remember this to this day. She had to come home and she had this book she had to study. They did not have her study all the counterfeits and problems that show up in counterfeits. She had to take a test on what a real bill looks like. They had her learn what is true. And as we go through this book, you'll begin to see more and more, Hank, the call, as we should earnestly contend for the faith, as we're called to fight and to protect and it's going to require us to know truth. Because this is where the call is. Now, we're going to get down to verse 20, where I want to get, where it's exciting, where he challenges us to strengthen ourselves and establish ourselves. But it's going to take about 3 more weeks to get there. Doug, will you close in a word of prayer?